my banks disappeared. I mean, they were all of a sudden in the news, like Haven Trust has been shut down and Decatur First has been shut down. I was like, oh,
what?
Of course, the reason why I was in survival mode is because I wasn't doing the things that NARPM would have taught me to do. Right?
So that's going to be this next year.
Yes. So I'm president-elect this year.
Congratulations, man. That's great. El Presidente.
Like, El Presidente. As people say congratulations, I said, I'm not sure that's the right word. You know, iron sharpens iron. Let's make each other better. And everyone is going to be better off for that.
Everybody's going to benefit from it, right?
Exactly.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Evernest Property Management Show. I am your host, Spencer Sutton, and today I don't have Matthew with me. This is 3 out of the past 4 podcasts I hadn't had Matthew, but the great news is I've got a fantastic guest with me. I have Todd Reid on the show. Todd, welcome to our show.
Thanks, Spencer. I really appreciate you inviting me.
Yeah, this is going to be fun because we're old buddies. We go back like 20 years.
Way back.
We were just like talking about that in the car. It's like 20 years. It's insane.
It's hard to believe. And we were going through some of those painful years. Of course, we suffered through 2008. We were going through together.
Great years and then painful years. That's right. Yeah. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But I'm thankful that you're here. And so to kick off, I'm going to read your bio right here. Todd Reid's been managing properties for over 25 years. Man, we're old.
Right.
First as an investor and then as a third-party property manager. He is the broker owner for DK Reynolds.net, which manages over 400 doors in the Atlanta metro area, actually around 470, so almost 500. Todd received his degree in industrial engineering from NC State University and his work.
Wolfpack.
Huh?
Go Wolfpack.
Go Wolfpack. And his work for IBM, Accenture, and Emery's? Is that
Evernest.
Evernest. Okay, yes. Evernest. Great. He left corporate America when he bought a HomeVestor franchise in 2003. So let's start right there, Todd, because you bought a HomeVestor franchise actually in the same month. I bought a HomeVestor franchise with my partner, Roland Beeson. And you and Roland, I hadn't quit my job yet. I hadn't taken the plunge, but Roland was ready to do it. And so you and Roland were in Dallas for training because back then they had 2 weeks of training in Dallas, Texas. And I think y'all spent the first 2 weeks training together.
Absolutely. And
did you know what you were doing back then? Had you been in real estate prior to that?
So as you mentioned, I left corporate America and I had some rental properties already.
Okay.
And really enjoyed that aspect of it, of buying some rental houses. And I took some classes on on creative financing, how to buy subject to, how to do sandwich loans. So, but I still had a full-time job, and I couldn't figure out how could I make the leap out of corporate America into real estate investing. And I was actually buying a few houses from HomeVestors, similar story to Matthew.
Yeah, right.
And that's how I learned about that. Wow, this is a franchise that can teach you how to do this as a full-time job. And so bought a brand new franchise, and the rest is history.
And so when you bought that in the Atlanta market, were you second or third? There was already a couple there. Was that right?
There are quite a few
already in Atlanta.
Yes.
Yeah, okay,
yes.
Gotcha.
We probably had about a dozen franchises.
Wow.
We had a very large ad council.
Yeah, very large ad council. And for those of you who are listening, all that means is, as an ad council, each market would get together and talk about the money that they're spending for advertising, how much everybody's contributing, what kind of advertising, what the money was being used for. Back then, a lot of it was billboards. Then we moved into direct mail and different things like that.
Right, and it's similar. We talk about NARPM, but in some respects, the ad council had the similar feel to NARPM. That we were individual franchisees, but we didn't look at ourselves as competitors. We're like, how can we join together?
Yes,
invest money and get the best return, because with marketing, a lot of that, it's exponential return. It's not linear when you get a good bucket of money to do some advertising.
Yeah, that's right. And we were buying billboards back then like dirt cheap. Our competitors were trying to figure out how they could buy billboards for what we were buying, and they couldn't. There's no way they could. And so we had a leg up, and those were the glory days. I'll tell you, Todd, man, I mean, at least in Birmingham, we were getting so many leads for our $500 to $7,500 a month. And it was some of it, when I look back, it was a little bit like shooting fish in a barrel. and you just thought, man, we're really good investors.
I tell you though, I wouldn't want to get back to doing that today because
Tell me why.
Yeah, I mean, back then our competitors were individual mom and pop. They were from, they were members of RIA. There was no organized company. There were no organized companies that were doing this. We were really the first ones.
Yes.
I mean, the Home Investors franchise was brilliant. The business model, and so we really were groundbreaking in this and what we're doing from a marketing perspective and how we're buying houses in a much more corporate fashion versus just individuals so it's. Now it's very different, right?
Very different.
You have institutional folks. You have a lot of people much more organized. All this. So I wouldn't want to do it today. I have no desire to go back.
Yeah, it's way different. So I have a podcast with a guy here in town who is an investor. I mean, and I've got lots of friends here in Birmingham who are still investors. So I talk to them a good bit. It's rough. I mean, it's rough out there. It's not the same as it was, and deals are harder. But I think it's just something for people who get into property management from investment. This is the way at least Matthew looked at it. I was talking to Adam Hobson, who's the guy who does the other podcast with me. He just says he loves it because he's a deal junkie. He's a deal junkie. So he loves the thrill of the chase and the kill and like, wow, I got another one. Matthew kind of decided he liked the grind of property management, the recurring revenue, and just if he could grind it out, he knew he could build something and have recurring revenue. So,
yeah, I do miss that. I mean, there's an adrenaline
you like
high.
The deals, yeah.
I do like that,
yeah.
and still, if I'm talking to one of my clients I want to sell, then go to the little deal mode, and maybe I'll buy it. And can you do some owner financing? And can we set? So there's still get a little bit of that when dealing with my clients, but it was trying to forecast when we were in the home investors days, how many deals you're going to close, how many,
had no idea, really.
It is really, really difficult.
Yeah.
And so I agree with what Matthew said as well, is property management is a lot more boring. Boring in the sense that it's very consistent and
predictable.
And predictable. And so that's it's hard business to grow, right? You're just making so little money on each house, and so it takes a long time to build that up. But it's very, very consistent, and that's really, really nice after you've been doing this like we both have for a long time,
for over 20 years. That's right.
Build up that critical mass.
Yeah, great point. So let's talk a little bit about we were both in the glory days. What was the great financial crisis like, and how was that transition for you into property management?
Wow, I still, if you've seen, which most of us in real estate have seen the movie or read the book, The Big Short. We lived that, right?
Oh,
I mean, that wasn't.
We were very close to that.
We were very close, and we went through that pain, and we saw the crazy loans. I mean, we
saw it before it all started unraveling, right? We were seeing that because if you were selling to retail people, it was insane,
right? I mean, it was. I mean, that scene in the movie where they talk to the stripper and she's got all. I was like, that was us. We were selling houses, retail sales to people that I wouldn't rent to.
Correct.
And so we was like, this is a house of cards.
Yeah.
But I still felt real comfortable because the real estate that I had, I was not highly leveraged. So I felt, okay, yeah, this is crazy with all this lending, but I'm in a good place. I'm okay. I didn't do any craziness. I didn't do all this cash, 100% cash out.
Right.
So
like a lot of people were doing.
Right. But man, who predicted, when Lehman went under and all of a sudden all of our local banks were going under, it was it was much more devastating than I ever predicted.
And you and I were talking earlier as we were coming into the studio, just talking about how both of our banks essentially decided, you're not going to get any more money. We had lines of credit and they were just like, no, you're not getting, because that's how we were buying houses, and we were not behind on anything. We hadn't been late for anything, but they just said, yeah, we're shutting this line of credit off. And we were like, wow. And then not only that, but the people I was wholesaling houses to were gone. Yeah. And there was no retail market anymore. It was gone.
It was gone. We had a program that we called the 6s and 7s program. And so we would go and find investors that had a six-figure income, 700 plus credit score. A lot of these folks were in corporate America in Atlanta that I did business with when I was in my IT consulting days. And they wanted a turnkey solution.
Yeah.
And so the first step we would take would get them to bring them to a local bank, get them set up with a construction line, and then we'd find a property for them, flip it to them, make money. I'd either take it down and resell it, or preferably just assign the contract.
Yep.
So we'd make money on the assignment. We would rehab it for them, and we were going.
Will you make money on the rehab too?
Absolutely. We had 10 to 12 crews running full time, rehabbing these houses.
Yeah.
And then once we rehabbed it, they'd refinance into conventional money, pay off that construction loan, and rinse and repeat. So then we'd buy some more houses.
The Burr method,
right? Yeah. And so that was going really well until First of all, do you remember when they changed the lending guidelines and you could no longer have more than 4 conventional loans?
Oh wow, yeah, that's right.
And so, which was craziness. I talked to my congressman. I said, we're the solution to the problem. I mean, these are very bankable investors. They're not speculative folks. They have great jobs. They're very liquid. And they're buying up these boarded up houses and investing in them.
And all of a sudden, you're putting a limit on what they can do.
Right. And so when you put the limit on it, that means they could no longer refinance out of their construction loans, which means now the bank's like, well, I'm not going to lend you any more money. So all of a sudden, everything was coming to a grinding halt. You mentioned your banks stopped lending money. My banks disappeared. I mean, they were all of a sudden in the news like Haven Trust has been shut down and Decatur First has been shut down. I was like, oh,
you're like, what?
Right. What do I do with these? Right. So crazy time.
Painful.
Crazy time.
So how did the transition to DK Reynolds happen?
So because we had a turnkey model, we were at the end after we did the construction and did the refinancing. Our investors wanted us to do the property management for them.
So it was very natural.
Yeah, it was natural, but we were terrible at it. I mean, I was managing my own rental properties, but now we're taking on as a third-party property manager. I mean, I did not have a broker's license. We had no property management software. We're running everything through Excel and QuickBooks. And we were losing money. We were terrible, but it didn't matter because we're making so much money. Buy, flip.
Your flipping was subsidizing the horrible management.
Absolutely. So when everything just crashed and burned and I had to let go like 3/4 of my staff, at that point, I had a decision to make. Do I go back to corporate America, which was a sickening thought, right? I mean, you can relate to that.
Yeah.
Or do I figure out property management? And so that was the decision that we made. It was like, okay, I need to really figure this business out and treat it well. And that's where DK Reynolds kind of came out of the ashes.
So when you came out of the ashes, like when did you really start focusing on the property management? Was it in 2008, like when everything was going under? Because the carnage kind of happened late 2007 into 2008, or was it a little bit later?
So we were already doing the property management.
Yeah, you're already doing that, right? But when did you get really focused and say, okay, this is going to be the primary business, and we're going to get really good, and then we're going to grow?
Yeah, like 2009, because when the carnage started to hit, we were buying like crazy, just like you guys were, right? So it was like, this is awesome. This is the market we've been waiting for.
We love it.
Until
all the money went away.
Right. Until all the money went away. Right. And then of course then everything comes to a screeching halt, and you have to, we had 2 buyers on staff. We had multiple folks managing contractors. So we had to lay everyone off, and then we had to take, okay, we're blessed that we have this portfolio that we're managing, but now we need to really just focus on it and create a true property management. So I had to find someone to hang as a broker and get that and put in place until I could get I didn't have a real estate license, never mind a brokerage license.
Yeah. When you're flipping houses, you don't need one.
And that's actually, in Georgia anyway, it's beneficial not to have a license.
To have one. That's right. Yeah. Because
you
don't have any rules, regulations telling you what you can and can't do.
Exactly.
Great. Okay. So you did that. And then I'm imagining, but you tell me, because you started your property management career and your clients were mainly investors, right? They were the sixes and sevens that you had. Did you continue to grow that? Was that become most of your portfolio? Or like, hey, we know these people, we know investors, and so therefore we're just going to keep, like, those are the clients that we're comfortable with? Or did you branch out? Because about that time, obviously, when people couldn't sell houses, you got a lot of more accidental landlords.
Right.
So how did your portfolio grow?
Yeah, we still were mostly with investors. Most of them were C-class properties. We had very few nice properties. And so, goodness, I can't even remember how we grew back then. but because we're just so much in survival
mode.
It was
yeah.
is right.
That's right.
So trying to convince. We're spending time mostly with our investors saying, "Don't sell, hang in there. You've got rental properties. Don't be freaking out because of the
just
market.
wait. They're gonna come back. They're gonna do great.
Exactly.
Everybody needs housing.
Right. So that's while we're trying to learn the business and then finally get some property management software in place, and so that was, I just wish, looking back, I wish I had gotten involved in NARPM a lot earlier. It would have made that, instead of me figuring out everything all by myself.
Right.
That would have expedited everything for sure.
So I think that's a great segue, because the reason you're here in the studio is because the Southern States NARPM conference is going on right now, and it's in Birmingham. So it just made sense to have you up here. So talk about, when did you discover NARPM? What was that like, and how long into the journey were you when you started leaning into NARPM? Yeah,
so I've been a member of NARPM for 12 years. Actually, just look that up. So it's been a long time. I joined because of Robert Locke, which we'll talk a little bit about later. But just I was always too busy to go to any NARPM meetings and participate in everything. So it's
you were in survival mode, trying to make things happen.
But of course, the reason why I was in survival mode is because I wasn't doing the things that NARPM would have taught me to do. Right. So that's the mistake that I definitely made, and a lot of people make when they say, I don't have time. I don't have time to get involved with NARPM, or I don't have time to hire a business coach because I'm just and that just keeps you in that grind.
Yeah.
But I really leaned into NARPM. It's only been about 3 or 4 years that I've really got involved. And started to meet people, and then got quickly was asked to just get into leadership.
Because you jumped into that pretty quickly, because you're in leadership in NARPM right now.
This is yeah. So I remember Megan Zellers came to me and asked me if I'd be interested in being on the board, and so I agreed to do that. And then before I knew it, we actually had someone else lined up to be president next year. And they had some personal issues that came up, so we're kind of a little bit of we got to find someone to replace them. And that's Tal Kramer came up to me and said, "Would you be willing to step in for this gentleman? They can't fulfill that role." So I agreed to do that.
So that's going to be this next year.
Yes. So I'm president-elect this year.
Congratulations, man. That's great. El Presidente.
El Presidente. That's like people say congratulations. I said, I'm not sure that's the right word.
I'm not sure that's right.
Or sucker.
I don't want anybody to ask me that, but yeah, good for you. No, that's great. That's great, because obviously, I mean, you mentioned Robert Locke. He talked you into coming into NARPM. Let's talk a little bit about Robert, because he's also kind of in our story. I believe when Matthew started to get serious about property management and growing the business, which it had kind of been, as a property management, had kind of been on the side and more like, hey, we can buy properties turnkey, fix them up, sell them to investors, and then kind of hold on to them and manage them for them, just very much like you were doing. And I think it wasn't until 2012 or 2013 when Matthew was like, hey, this can be a really serious business. Like, he kind of woke up and goes, wow, this thing's growing, and maybe I should focus all my attention on it and not be a turnkey provider for the most part. And but he got real involved with NARPM. He started coming to Nashville and coming to Atlanta, and that's where he met Robert Locke. Right. Robert is a steely veteran of the industry, and back then I think he had like 1,200 doors that he was managing. But the thing that Matthew and I both realized about Robert was he was so generous with his information.
Absolutely.
So talk a little bit about that. What's he meant to you and kind of your growth with DK? Right.
So when I met Robert, I think the first class I took with him was 10 revenue streams that you can have in property management. And he went through that. And I was blown away because he still owned Crown at the time.
Right.
And so I'm sitting in this class with a competitor of mine. Matter of fact, we're both in Roswell, not just Atlanta. And he's teaching me how to compete better against him. That's how I first looked at it.
Right.
And what he did a great job of explaining to us, and Mike Nelson from Excalibur as well, is we're not the competitors. The real competitor is the investor that decides to self-manage.
Correct.
And that was the light bulb just went off on me when I realized that. And the way and Robert especially embrace that. And so what we're going to do is we're going to teach our industry to be better at what we do, because we have terrible reputation, and it's well deserved.
Right.
Because there's so many of us who are very poor operators, and so if we educate the industry and raise the reputation, raise the ships, less people are going to be motivated to self-manage, because it's going to start hearing good stories instead of bad stories.
Yeah.
And they really embrace that early on. And then share that knowledge, with you and with me,
right.
and really have made us much better businesses, because just of that, the philosophy of it's like there's plenty of business, right? They are absolutely the antithesis of a scarcity principle, right? They believe that there's plenty of business for all of us. Let's just make each other, iron sharpens iron. Let's make each other better, and everyone is going to be better off for that.
Everybody's going to benefit from it, right?
Exactly.
It's an abundance mindset.
That's exactly right.
There's plenty of business out there for everybody. And this is, I think probably, and maybe even Robert Locke influenced us by his generosity. And like, this is one of the things we love to do. We love to give back to the industry, because we learn so much. And that's why we even do this podcast, is because, hey, we learn things from people who come on the podcast, but we also want to give back. And if we can help everybody become more professional, better operators, then, man, it's going to be better for everybody.
No, Evernest has been an awesome in that space. You guys have really exemplified that, and sharing the knowledge and sharing how to grow and sharing culture. And so we're very appreciative. I know my team loves to listen to your podcast, and we all learn a lot. So we appreciate, what you're giving back to the industry. And that's part of, that's a big reason why I agreed to become president, is I think it's my turn to try to give back. Even though just over dinner last night, I was talking to a young property manager, and he's like, man, I really need someone to help me, to hold me accountable, and to help me organize. Yeah. And I shared with him, I said, you're welcome to meet my business coach. And so we're in the same market, but my thought is that, again, if I can help him, like Robert helped me in the past, then that's an opportunity to be a blessing to someone else, like Robert's been a blessing to us.
Well, we want to share. I wasn't there yesterday morning, but something big happened for Robert here at Southern States. So tell us what happened with Robert yesterday.
Yeah, probably about 5 or 6 months ago, Monica Gilroy, which most of you know, she's like attorney extraordinaire.
She's
talking
great.
about giving back to our industry, right?
Yeah, yeah, she's fantastic.
She's a rock star. Keeping us out of jail and, keeping us up on all things legislative. She and I got together because she goes way back with Robert Locke, and we said, it'd be kind of cool if we did some sort of award, a lifetime achievement award for Robert. And so we brought it to the board, the Atlanta board, and the board. Almost everyone on the board had been positively influenced by Robert. Right. And so we kind of ran in with it from there. And then we decided, first we're going to try to do it one day, but that was a little bit too quick. So then we decided Southern States was a better place to give the award. And so yesterday morning, Monica bought this absolutely beautiful, I think you saw it yesterday.
Yeah, I saw it. It's gorgeous. It's great.
Gorgeous. And we awarded Robert a Lifetime Achievement Award. He had no idea. The secret was kept, which is great. And just to see his face, I saw some of the photos of his face when so we first announced that we're going to have this Lifetime Achievement Award. And then we announced that Robert was going to be the first recipient. And then the last thing we announced, I don't think you heard this part, is that each of our NARPM chapter meetings, we award scholarships. And we are going to now call that scholarship the Robert Locke Scholarship.
That is great.
So
wow,
it's so well deserved.
I was speaking with somebody yesterday at the conference. I got there a little bit late, but they said it was actually an emotional time when he received that award.
Very emotional.
Why do you think that is?
Well, the culmination of all his years and the number of lives that have been affected. I was crying. I was up on the stage and I had tears in my eyes, and just the love that he has poured out to so many people and so many lives that have been affected. It can't help but be emotional. I mean, he kept it together. I thought he did a really good job considering. He said he had to kind of, really focus before he got up on stage and gave his little speech. But it was a very, very emotional time especially for us that are really close.
Yeah, they're close and have been impacted by him.
Right. Can I share a little story? My little Robert story?
Yeah. So, go for it.
Robert's, when he sold Crown, and they part of his agreement was that he can do consulting, but he had to it was a little careful on whether he could do group consulting, but not like help a competitor, because they didn't quite understand what we do in NARPM, right? So I go to Robert and I said, Robert, how about I will fly you and your wife Betty down to Colombia, South America. I have a ranch down there, and I'll all expenses paid if you agree that you and I fly down a day earlier, and I get to spend, or actually 2 days earlier, I'm sorry, and I get to spend 2 full days just with you and no one else, and you just teach me, and we go through. We literally spent a full day going through his property management agreement line by line, and asking questions. Well, this happens, or the owner says this, or how do you respond to that? And then we spent the whole second day going through his lease and going through, how do I handle this? How do I respond to this? If a tenant does this, so 2 full days of getting decades of knowledge just poured into my brain was the most incredible experience.
That's great. Wow, what a story. That's incredible.
So, yeah.
Well, I might be able to teach you something if you take me to Colombia. So, I'm
Absolutely.
kidding. I'm kidding. I have a Robert Locke story. So when I joined Evernest, I was like, hey, I want to write really helpful content for people, and obviously I want to be found in search pages. I think we were just in Birmingham at the time. Maybe we were Birmingham and Nashville, and Matthew introduced me to Robert, and we went over there and saw him in Atlanta and talked to him, and I said, hey, would you mind if I ever came back to Atlanta and just interviewed you for a while? I just want to get some great content because I think you've got plenty to give. And he said, yeah. And he said, come over to my house, meet my wife, and let's just hang out together. And I was like, wow, who's inviting me to this house? I didn't know him well enough to be invited to his house. But anyway, I went over to his house, we sat down, and we talked for 4 or 5 hours, just about all kinds of things. But one of the things that came out of that was this story. He said, you know what? I realized that I had somebody moved out of my house, and you know what? I realized that they had been in that house for 20 years. And wow. And it was a client of his, and he said, you know what? I had that client for 20 years. And so it had me thinking, the resident really is the asset, not the house. The resident's the asset. So we sat there and talked this whole time, and he goes, I'm going to give you, I think maybe 10 ways to keep a tenant for 20 years or something like that. So we just went, and it was great. And I just left there going, man, how generous. And we used that piece of content in a lot of different ways to educate landlords and other property managers, but it was great. It was fantastic.
And it extends way beyond property management.
Yes, correct.
I was blessed to be able to go to his, he had a big, huge wedding anniversary about 6 months ago, I guess it was. And he was talking about, he did a marriage enrichment class at church. And he talked about how he was very open with the struggles that he went through in his marriage and the difficult times, and how his pastor came to him and said, I want you to teach this marriage enrichment class. And Robert's like, are you kidding me? You know
I'm struggling.
What I'm struggling. He said, that's exactly why I want you to teach it. Wow. And so then he went on the stories of lives that he and Betty have affected in a positive way. And some of those couples they taught 20 years ago, and they showed up and they were there. And it was just amazing. So we had the experience yesterday of how many lives were affected by Robert in our space in NARPM. Yeah. In the anniversary, we saw all these lives that were affected from his church and from his classroom. So it just shows his character and his heart. And extends way beyond just property management.
It really makes you want to be a better person, right?
Absolutely.
Makes you want to have very similar character, be generous, giving, and help other people.
Absolutely. Yeah, just coincidentally, I listen to Darren Daly, which is kind of a daily mentoring. I listen to that every morning. Today's topic was go out and find that mentor of yours and thank him.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, wow, how's that for timing? Because
You did that yesterday. That's
it was just yesterday. Wow. And just so blessed to have someone like Robert pour into me, because I was so undeserving.
Yeah.
And he didn't want anything in return.
That's right.
It was just
didn't ask for payment.
Exactly.
That's great story. Glad we honored Robert in this way, because he is really special. Most people in NARPM know who he is. And so let's keep going with your story, because you started getting your footing. You got involved with NARPM. I'm just very curious, because you're close to 500 doors right now, which is sizable. I want to know how you think about marketing your company and the BDM position. I'm just very curious about that, because obviously this is what I do at Evernest.
Right. I think when it comes to marketing and finding business, everyone's got to find their niche that works for them. I mean, you guys do these podcasts. This is what you guys do great, and it really gives you incredible exposure. For us, it's about networking and like just meeting people and let them know what we do and being out there in the community. And so that's really the space that we've focused on. My BDMs are every week I meet with them. I'm still
how many BDMs
I have two
do you
BDMs.
have? Okay, you have 2 BDMs.
Yes.
All right, and you're still heavily involved in some of that, right?
I'm heavily involved as being a sales manager. I don't take
you
calls.
don't take calls.
The only time I get involved is if we have an investor that maybe has a portfolio, and then I'll talk to them for the reasons that because of our investor background.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it's really more of a sales manager, role. And the reason I have 2 BDMs is I was, as you know, sales folks, they come and go, or it's really hard to keep a BDM around a long time. There's no secret about that. We all struggle with that.
Correct.
So I was tired of hiring a BDM, and then they'd leave, and then guess who's the backup BDM?
You're back
into the BDM.
Yeah.
So I have 2 BDMs, not necessarily because I want to bring on an enormous number of doors, but I want to have a backup plan. When one leaves, it's not an if, that I still have another one.
Sure.
So to me, that was a big. It's an investment, clearly. I mean, the BDMs are not cheap.
Correct.
Our BDMs,
especially good ones.
Yeah, and our BDMs, they're right at 6 figures each. So that's a big investment for us, but it's worth it to be able to keep me to be able to work on the business instead of in the business.
Are your BDMs, because you mentioned referral, word of mouth, are your BDMs out in the marketplace? Like that's their number one priority, is to be out in the marketplace, meeting people, going to BNI groups or whatever to generate those referrals? Absolutely right.
Matter of fact, my Tim, I think you met yesterday. He was in my BNI group, so I'm no longer in BNI, but that's how we met, was through BNI. Okay. BNI. He was actually the salesperson that sold me my website.
Okay.
And so and he is a sales machine. Knew nothing about property management, but I could tell you, it was easier to take someone who's a
great salesperson
and teach them property management than the other way around.
You can't teach. I mean, somebody who has a lot of property management experience, you can't teach them drive and ambition and hunger and those killer instincts.
Absolutely right. And answering the phone, it doesn't matter when it is, because we have separate phones for our BDM, so they know when a call's coming in, that's a lead, and they need to answer that.
That's right.
And
it's kind of like our buy phone back in the home days.
Guess where I got that idea, right? It's totally the buy phone.
We didn't care where we were. If we were having anniversary dinner with our wives, we were picking that buy phone up if it came in, because that was a lot of money.
Yeah, how much were we paying a lead back then? It was a lot.
It was a lot. I don't know, but yeah. So anyway, I interrupted you, but so they're like answering the phone calls and out in the marketplace. So
for example, when we have our sales meeting each week, they provide me. They have to give me a status report every week, and on there they need to have every single week. They need to have 2 1-to-1s with a real estate agent. So it's not just you got to go out, find a realtor, sit down, and have breakfast or coffee or whatever.
That's right.
So one of the things, I think actually this is Robert Locke's idea, was he said, don't mail referral checks or co-op fees for someone that rents one of your houses. Get together and hand deliver them, because guess what? You call a busy realtor, they're not going to want to get together with you. But if you have a check you're going to hand them, So whenever we sit there and we pay a co-op fee for a rental property, we'll give them up. Hey, I got a check for you. Can we get together at this coffee shop and meet and share a little bit about what DK Rentals does and our referral program, et cetera. So it's all about pounding the flesh. We're involved in North Fulton Chamber of Commerce, so we're getting out there, and so it's really just getting the word out on who DK is and to a bigger network. It's a lot of our business is about referral.
So tell me, because this has always been, when I was doing sales for Evernest, I came in as marketing, but quickly took over the sales position. So I was answering a lot of calls. We were getting a lot of inbound calls. So there was no Spencer go out and meet realtors and all that stuff. It was like, I'm just trying to answer all the calls that are coming in. So my question really is, like, what's this, do you think the secret sauce is because it takes a while to generate referral business.
Absolutely.
It is not immediate, right? You have a BDM, and even if they're tenacious, they're not going to be making money day one on that, or they're not going to be bringing in probably referrals the first month or the second month. How have you seen that in your experience play out over time?
Sure. Well, it's the same thing with your podcast. You don't you do one podcast, you don't get all of a sudden get
it doesn't matter,
it's
right?
Consistency, right? It's sticking to, that's kind of back when I said before, figure out what you're good at, what you like, and stick to it. And because it's going to take time. You do it through your podcast and getting out there in social media. We do it through meeting people and sitting down, old fashioned guerrilla marketing. But it takes a long time, but we've been doing this for years, and we did a lot of this when the real estate market was super hot. Yes. So we weren't getting a lot of referrals because they're selling everything.
They're selling everything, right?
Right. But we built the relationships then, and so now when the market's turning, all of a sudden those realtors that we reached out during that time are now turning around and sending referral to us. So this is not a quick strategy that we just started. We've been doing this for years now. And it really came out of my days, came out of B&I, which really taught me the importance of networking and meeting with people and doing one-to-ones. And so I just incorporated what we learned at B&I into just going out into the marketplace and meeting.
And how long have your BDMs been with you right now?
So Jenny's been with us 2.5 years, and Tim's been with us, I think, July will be 1 year.
Okay.
And so when you bring in a new BDM, you're right, they don't have the relationships, but because he's got remember the buy phone stays, right? So the phone they call, and it might not be someone that Tim met.
It could have been somebody else that was in that position.
Exactly right. Yeah. Exactly. Sadly, the BDM that was in that position, she passed away. Oh, and very, very sad story.
Yeah, sad.
Because she's younger than me, so that's really kind of hit home. And but people still call for Stephanie. It's people that she met, and it's like, well, Stephanie's no longer with us, but how can I help you? And so that's keeping that email address and keeping that same phone number for years has really paid dividends.
How did you do it? Because I'm sure there's a lot of property managers out there, some business owners who are probably still in the BDM role, right? Especially if they're still trying to grow their company. They're not to 400 or 500 doors. How did you manage that at the very beginning? Was it just something like, hey, I have to grow this, so I'm going to be out in all these meetings. There's no other way to do it.
Yeah, so it's a whole transition. It started off where back when I hired my business coach, I just lost a big client, and so we were barely breaking even. I was highly involved in the operations, and then when I had a little bit of time, I do the BDM role. And my business coach said, "Okay, when I first started, brought him on board, and I told him I don't have any money. I'm really hurting here." And he said, "Okay, well, we're not going to sit down and put together your mission statement and vision and values. We're going to we need to focus first on
we need to get business.
We need to get business. We need to get cash in the door. So the first thing we're going to do is get you out of operations so you can sell."
Yeah.
And so we worked real hard to get the team in place and operations so that I could spend more time selling. And so then when we got to that point, now it's like, okay, we need to get you out of sales so you could focus more on working on your business instead of in your business.
That's right.
So it's kind of that progression that we went through. It's so then we would hire a BDM, they last for a while, then they leave. And so then we were like, okay, the next thing we need to do is go from one BDMs, to two BDMs, to make sure that you keep working on the business.
Yeah, which is great. That's fantastic. Great model, I think. And I've never thought about that, like having two, so you don't have to go back into it, because I've been back in it after being out of it for a while, and it's the grind.
It totally is.
It's the grind, and plus it pulls you off of other things that you need to be doing that are really important also. So good story. It
is, and I wish I could remember who it was that said this in one of our NARPA meetings. It was a broker owner, and they're talking about, hey, I'm the business owner, and no one is good at me at sales, right? We've all
had that. Yeah, we've all had that thought.
But the problem is, we might be really good at sales. The problem is, we're not consistently doing it, because we're always getting pulled into different things that, as business owners, that we need to do. And so you lose leads because you did a good job of following up, then you stopped following up, or you didn't answer the phone live, and so what's happened is, for example, like Tim, even though he's only been in the business for 9 months, he's always answered the phone. He's always following up, and we use Lead Simple as our CRM, and so I know. I mean, I'm tracking that. I'm saying, are there any red tasks in there, which means you haven't done your follow up work. Right. So to see him, how consistent he is, and to see how successful he's been, even though he's so new to the industry, shows what a really good BDM can do, and the importance of referrals. I mean, we had a great analysis we just did, looking at our lead sources and closing rates based on lead sources. And by far, realty referrals are good. Referrals from friends are gold.
They're gold.
They're gold. Those are the ones.
You should close 100% of those.
Yeah, we're not anywhere near close to 100%, but we definitely close much more. The percentage of closing rate is
way higher.
Much higher than any other source of lead source.
I don't know when I started thinking this. I know we've preached to this around Evernest quite a bit, but there's something so great about finding a person who's better than you at whatever role you need to replace yourself in.
Absolutely.
Like, how can I, for me to sit here and think, well, nobody can do marketing like as well as I can, that would be foolish for me to sit here and think. I should be thinking, who can I find to bring on the team who's better than me in whatever skill set that I'm looking for? And we started doing that in sales too. Now, Matthew loves to say that he's been the best salesperson that Evernest has ever had, but that's not true. I was way better than him. No, but we started finding some people, and we're like, oh my goodness gracious. When you have somebody who is so tenacious and so good, just like in the sales position, it's just it's very freeing, because you don't have to tightly manage that person.
Absolutely.
You may look in and see what they're doing in the CRM and Lead Simple, but the results are the deals are coming in, or the results are things are getting done, if it's in operations or whatever the case is. I remember when we hired Graham Robinson, who's our president. You met Graham when we came in. He's so much better than he was so much better than all of us, that it was very obvious we had hired an A player. And it was like, wow, he makes everybody else better in the company. And so when you can do that, like, I would just encourage everybody who's listening, if you need, look for that A player, look for that person who's going to take it to the next level, because it will free you up to do so much more.
And A players only like to work with players.
Steve Jobs says they don't like B players.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
They're like, what are you doing with these bozos?
Right. And if you don't do something about it, they're going to leave.
They're going to leave. They're going to go find another team with A players.
Exactly.
That's
exactly.
Right.
I mean, my Graham story is we hired Andrea right out of college, and she is in Bogota, Colombia, and so she started working in our leasing department. And she is so organized. I'm like, how are you so young and have your, together? And and the things she anticipates. So when I ask her to do something, I love it. When I ask them to do it and they do it and it's done, they tell me it's done.
That's great.
It's even better when I say, ask them to do it, and they're like, Todd, I already did that.
I knew you were going to ask that.
That's right. So it's already taken care of.
That's incredible.
And that's how, so she just owns that. I mean, because that's one of our values is extreme ownership.
Yeah, that's right.
She embodies that in the leasing department. She owns that, and she makes sure. I mean, and it's a machine. I mean, we're renting. We've rented more houses year to date this year than we have in the history of our company.
Wow.
And which in this market is really saying something.
Yeah, that's right. It is.
So yeah, she's so much better, to your point, at that than I would be, because she's just so tenacious. She makes sure those applications are processed, quickly. Does whatever it takes to get it through.
Right.
She coordinates our leasing agent, our boots on the ground in Atlanta, and she does it all from Bogota.
Which is great.
So our folks our folks in Atlanta actually report to folks in Bogota.
Yeah. Right. Wow. You can find great people everywhere.
Exactly.
Great people are everywhere. Okay, so as we wind up here, Todd, tell me what's next for DK Reynolds. What are your looking 5 years down the road? If you had a crystal ball, what do you think?
Yeah, it's I just turned 61, and there's I'm getting married this fall.
Nice, congratulations!
So that's huge.
Yeah, that's huge,
and that's very excited.
So
about
you have kids in the future, right? No, I'm kidding.
Grandchildren, maybe.
Awesome.
I've had conversations with my younger son to see if he's interested in getting involved in the business, and because if he is, he needs to sometime in the next few years needs to start learning the business, etc.
Right.
I'm not just going to hand it to him. My goals have really changed. I read a great article by Todd Reid and talking about how 800 doors is a real sweet spot. 600 to 800 doors. And then just looking and reading some of the other, again, back to people that give to our industry about how much simpler it is to stay in one market. And so my goals I was talking about, maybe going to other markets in Georgia, or maybe I want to hit 1,000, to 1,100 doors. That's changed. I really think I want to keep it, 600 to 800 doors. Yeah. I think you can maximize profit. That you know better than us,
correct.
Right?
You do.
That's
you
it. Then it takes a long time before it starts. You plateau.
That's right.
And so that's really that's my goal, is to do that, and then to work on more satellite businesses. Like a repair business. That can support. Not just DK, but other property managers. We all want some good repair business. Maybe it could be doing some insurance, et cetera. So do that versus trying to break through 1,000 doors. So that's where we're trying to take this. But again, then grow my my senior staff to the point that I could be like a Tal Kramer who's, going on Mediterranean vacations because he's got his son Aaron stepping in there.
That's right. That's the dream, right? That's the dream. That's the dream.
I still get to go to Southern States,
right. Yeah, that's right. Well, listen, it's been great having you here. Best of luck on your presidency next year.
Appreciate it.
We'll be a part, however we can be a part, and just really appreciate you, Todd, and all that you give to the NARPM world and to other. I know you help a lot of property managers in Atlanta, and thanks for being here. Thanks for being with us.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it. Be on the lookout here. The next probably 2 weeks, we'll announce where next Southern States Convention is going to be.
Awesome.
I can tell you I'll tell you this much. It's probably going to be Tennessee.
Okay, good. Love Tennessee.
Everyone be on the lookout for that. And because the year after that's going to be, we're going to join with Florida again, because every 3 years we do that. So hopefully we'll get a great turnout like we did in your wonderful town of Birmingham. And thanks for hosting us.
Yeah, absolutely. Great to have everybody here. Sorry that y'all had cold water for one day in the Sheridan, but we want to toughen everybody up here in Alabama. That's right. We just got hot water the other day in Alabama. So no, I'm kidding.
Right.
All right, everybody. Thanks for being here on this podcast episode. We will be back next week with another episode of the Evernest Property Management Show. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Spencer.